Greetings guys, and welcome to another video of Jun Ismail fishing. um, I've been on break for a few weeks now, and I haven't done a video in a while, so been doing quite a bit of fishing, and the weather has now turned south today, so I have some time on hand to actually make some content for you guys. And yeah, today's video is going to be on tips on avoiding to lose your trace. So I'm going to talk on a few aspects on that, but before we get to the video of the day, we're just fresh from the fishing expo KZN that was held at Saxony Westwood Mall last weekend, and I met quite a few guys there from my subscribers of my channel. And yeah, thank you guys for the support. It's inspiring to hear your views, and it says that you are learning something, and that's what the whole aspect and the whole objective of this channel is, to build a sport, to educate guys, to clarify anything of concern regarding rock and surf angling. So yeah guys, thanks so much for the support. I'm gonna continue building on this channel, gonna continue talking on relevant topics to the guys. So make sure that you comment on what you'd like to see, uh, content videos on any specific topic, so I can prepare on it and give my view on it. Yeah guys, so the fishing has been good in the last few weeks. There's been quite a bit of sardine. Yeah, oddly the sardines did pass North Coast. In fact, I was fishing at Tugela a few weeks ago, and the sardines were passing by. I did get a couple of Garrick, my first time I've got that species on a whole Natal sardine. Yeah, so finally got that species sticked. Got my first snook also. There's been quite a few snook coming out, so there's been some action, but the sardines have not been very common this side. It's just a few days where there were pockets that were coming close to shore. Dolphins were busting, there were bird activity, so yeah, managed to capitalize on it, and yeah, got 2 new species in a few weeks that I've been trying during my holiday. So yeah guys, hope you've been catching. And yeah, so I'm gonna start this video by explaining what exactly is a trace. So to viewers that watching this video but don't understand exactly what is a trace, maybe you're new to the sport, maybe it's your first time hearing about this concept of trace. So what exactly is a trace? So when guys fish, we have your rod, your reel, you have your line or braid, and we attach a trace to that. A trace is made up of your swivel, and it's attached, you have some nylon, you attach your hook, and you attach your sinker to that also. So basically that is your trace. So that aspect of your swivel line, a sinker and hook is your trace. Can be, there's many different forms and different traces that we use to target different species. You can watch my videos as to some of the traces I make, like your full metal jacket. You get your bite trace, you get your general bait trace. So there's many different traces, but today we're talking on traces in general. So yeah guys, that is what a trace is, and the video today is about how we can prevent us losing that trace. So we know that no matter who you are, no matter how good of an angler you are, everybody loses traces. So you are bound to lose a trace. Some just lose less traces than others, but everybody loses traces. Part of the sport, is part of the game. That's how it goes. So you can take these tips and you can apply it and see if it works for you. And I'm just going to give you my opinion, my views as to what you can do to prevent yourself from continuously losing the traces. Can be a frustrating thing because traces are gone expensive. With regards to, if you want to buy a good quality hook, if you want to buy some expensive fluorocarbon if you have expensive swivels, like you get combination swivels, and more expensive now is your sinkers. So some sinkers now can be varying up to 20-30 rand each. So if you're looking at it, it can be quite a costly affair if you continuously lose your traces. So this video will help you to prevent you from losing those traces, and hopefully everyone can benefit from that. So yeah guys, that was the small introduction for this video. I'm going to target 3 different aspects today and talk on it in depth as to how it relates to this topic. The 3 aspects we're going to talk about is your casting, is the hooks you use, and your sinkers. And we're going to start first with your casting. So one way of losing a trace is if you use a multiplier reel with nylon, which very few guys do nowadays, but there are guys that do use nylon. I personally like it because it's one of the ways on which I learn fishing, learn to cast well, learn to understand fishing, fighting fish using a multiplier nylon. So I still use it. And one of the ways guys lose traces is when they they cast and the nylon overwinds into the reel, which causes it to snap, because nylon, once it has a high impact onto another piece of nylon, it snaps and everything goes away. So one of the ways in which you can prevent this is, if you're using nylon onto multiplier, you cast your sinker out first without any bait, let your nylon get wet, and you reel in. You cast about 2 or 3 times, let it get wet, and you'll find that the line comes out smoothly. And make sure when you wind your nylon into your multiplier, it's winded evenly. So I'm going to not talk much on that because not many guys do that, but to the guys that do use multipliers, nylon, wet your line first, carve a few casts, make sure your hands are moist, and you wind in evenly. You'll prevent yourself from losing traces. For the guys that are using grinder and braid, you have something called a bail arm into a reel. So at times with the action of casting, that bail arm, actually you have to pick it up for the line to be releasing, and when you cast, sometimes that bail arm pops back over and locks, and that causes the impact while the sinker is going out, trace is going out, that bail arm goes over, it stops, and then everything busts off. So yeah guys, when you are using, this happens for some reels that that just lock over quite easily, and that's not good. So make sure that your bail arm is properly is over, and when you cast, make sure that this doesn't go over. If for some reason it's your reel is not, if it goes over, and while you're casting you need to service the reel, make sure it locks. Maybe the bearing is gone, or depends on what components the reel have. Make sure that the bail arm doesn't go over, and watch your action also, that your hand doesn't mistakenly pull it over, and that will cause you to lose a trace. So guys, beware for that, your bail arm not to go over while you're casting. So the other aspect while you're casting and you can lose a trace is when you are winding, you find your braid circling the tip. So you get an overwind of your braid on your tip, and you'll find when you cast, the line snaps off at the tip and can cause you to break your rod. It can cause you to lose your trace. It can cause injury also. So make sure at all times that the line is gone through each eye evenly, and there's no overwinding to tips, because that can cause some serious problems. You can break your rod if you're traveling quite far and you're carrying one rod, you have a cast that breaks, and that's the end of your trip. So make sure your line does not get snagged or does not get wrapped over your tip. So that must be a priority. So another aspect of guys casting and busting of traces is the knots are not tied properly. So some guys use the uni knot. Sometimes it's not tied it properly, it's not set properly, and when they cast, the impact of the cast onto the knot, it's not holding, it busts off. And guys, make sure you take your time, tie your knots properly, make sure it sits correctly, um, make sure it's moist. Take your time, work on the knots, pull the tag in, go slowly, and make sure you tighten the tag in. Once it's in, pull it, test it, don't rush. If you don't understand the knots, you can watch videos as to how to tie it, but don't ever compromise your knots, because that will be you losing a chase, losing a fish, breaking a rod, many different things. So make sure your knots are 100% tied properly. Also, once you're casting, guys, use top shot attached to a leader. Now, some leaders are thick, 180 pound, 150 pound, 250 pound. Thin monofilament to thick monofilament, you need a knot that will be very thin attached from leader to top shot. My personal knot that I use is the FG knot. It's the strongest, thinnest knot. Some knots, if you're tying, I found uni to uni knot, if you're tying a thin braid into a thick braid, the knot comes too big and it catches into your eye and you bust traces. I went through a very frustrating point at a few years ago where I was continuously busting traces, and eventually I reflected and it was the knot that was getting stuck onto the eye, and eventually I changed to the FG knot. The Slim Beauty also works very well, but make sure your knots are tied properly. It's thin as possible, because that knot has to actually escalate through each eye before it actually goes out. So make sure your knot is thin as possible. If you're using a thick leader, go with the FG. So avoid having thick knots, because that's gonna make you lose a trace. So while we're using braid onto our fixed pole reels, our grinders, the line has to be loaded properly. So you can have something called a wind knot. If you don't load your braid properly into your reel, so use a machine spool to load your braid so it's evenly and put as tightly as possible. But if you just wind it loosely, you'll find your knots, you'll find your braid bunching up, you'll find a wind knot, and eventually when you're casting, that knot can get very big, and you hook a fish, it's gonna snap. You put pressure on it, it's gonna snap. You may reel it out, and it can be frustrating for you to take it out or cut it. Eventually you're gonna have to replace a spool of braid. So make sure you load your braid very tight and use a machine to load your braid. So when you're casting also, you cast your bait into a place where you feel you're gonna get a bite. But more often than not, the bites are more common near rocks, near reefs, but know where you're throwing. If there's a reef, if there's a ledge, if you throw directly onto that, you're gonna get stuck. You need to understand how far to throw from it, how near to throw from it, where you understand where fish feed. So you need to throw away from that, but not too close to the rock, because if you cast onto that rock, fish don't actually go onto that rock and feed. It depends also how deep waters are. Most likely they're next to the reef. So if you cast where, you won't get stuck. But if you're fishing in reefy areas, you're bound to get stuck, because that's where fish feed. So with experience, it will come. It's hard for me to really explain where to cast, because there's so many different structures, so many different working waters, so many different troughs, gullies, rips, holes, etc. So you need to be able to cast in a place where you're less likely to get stuck. And when you're fighting a fish also, move your rod in a way where it moves away from the reef, but that's another topic altogether. So yeah guys, that's your aspect on casting, how you're not gonna, how you won't lose traces. These are just some points. I'm gonna go to the second one, which I'm gonna talk about, which is hooks. So what exactly happens is, when you cast your bait, put a hook on it, and that hook actually gets, once you're reeling in, once it settles or it moves, it gets hooked onto a reef, or gets hooked onto a rock, or gets hooked onto a mussel, and then you're stuck, and then you're trying to reel in, and then it's stuck, and then the hook actually goes and gets stuck into those things. So using hooks that are less likely to get stuck is, we have two different types of hooks that we commonly use here, which is your J hooks versus your circle hooks. So J hooks is open, you're more likely to get stuck with a J hook. Your circle hook, it goes in, the barb is a bit in, so while you're reeling, you actually don't, it doesn't look for that rock. You can get stuck with a circle hook, but it's less likely than a J hook, my opinion. So when you are fishing in those reefs, or if you're fishing in a rocky area, I advise a circle hook. You're less likely to get. So when you're reeling also, sometimes you're winding over rocks, and you can actually reel in the entire distance of your cast, and when you come right in front, you can get stuck. So make sure when you're reeling in, you wind quite fast to the front, because those rocks, so if you're reeling slowly where there's no rocks, save your energy, pick your rod up, make sure the bait is on the surface, and then it goes over those rocks. But if you leave your line right down, you're winding, it connects to those rocks, and those rocks are on the base of the ocean. So make sure you keep your trace on the surface. That will prevent you from actually getting stuck. So if you do get stuck and you get your hook out, you get your trace back, good for you. But that's not the end of it. You need to check whether your hook is bent, because sometimes you're putting pressure, your hook opens. You get a bite on the next throw that you won't hook the fish. So make sure to check if your hook is in its correct shape, and also check if your hook is blunt. So sometimes the tip of the hook actually gets stuck onto those mussels or rocks, and you're pulling and the tip breaks off. So you need to actually feel if that hook is sharp enough. If it's slightly blunt, chuck it away. You don't want to use a blunt hook. You'll get a bite of a lifetime and you'll miss it. So check always that your hook is sharp and it is straight and it's in the right shape. So yeah, that's on hooks. The third aspect we're speaking on is your sinkers. So when you cast, you casting a sinker out, and your sinker goes to the ocean. Sometimes you can't really see what goes on underwater. There's sand lifting up, there's different tides, there's different kinds of currents in the water that makes sand lift up from the bottom of the ocean. So when you're casting, you cast there, your sinker can get stuck and get buried, and you wait for some time, maybe 10 minutes, 15 minutes, 20 minutes, and you find that you're stuck. There's no rocks there, but you get stuck. That sand is lifted and lifted and lifted, and eventually your sinker has got buried. You can lose a trace like that. So when you are casting, make sure that you're casting from a place where you can see that sand is not lifting there. So you can actually see sand lifting. If you look at the ocean, you'll find like some brown sand coming to the top of the ocean. Stay away from that. Fish don't like that. Fish can't breathe properly when the sand lifting in, so they don't like when that sand actually goes into the gills. And yeah, stay away from that. Go to another place where there is deeper water, better walking water, so your sinker doesn't get stuck in. That can avoid losing a trace like that. Tip when you're making a trace, use thinner line for your sinker. You can have a fish on, you can fight, your hook line must be strong, but if that sinker gets stuck onto a rock, the sinker can go away. But if you got thick line on your sinker, that fish will be on, and you won't be able to bust that sinker off. You'll lose the fish, you lose the trace like that. So use thinner line onto your sinker. My personal preference, I use 0.65 or 0.70 onto my sinker line. Reason for that is I use a heavy rod. I use a 7 to 9 ounce rod, but I cast with quite a bit of power and impact. So if I use too thin line, then it busts off. So I use like 0.70. But you need to just assess and look, and maybe you can, for the rod that you use for the impact of casting that you're having, what kind of sinker line will you use. But make sure it's weaker line, it's thinner line than usual, because if it gets stuck onto a rock while the fish is on, sinker can go away, land the fish, it's fine. So yeah, use a thinner line for your sinker, it will help you. Now there's various different types of sinkers that one has that get stuck more than usual. So grapnel sinkers get stuck more often than your other sinkers, like cone sinkers and pear shapes or whatever it is. But grapnel has its place if you're fishing on a rock and there's no current, there's no need for it. But while you're winding in a grapnel sinker, it has wires. If it's not on the surface, it goes down, and it's more likely to catch onto a rock to get stuck. So make sure you keep your wires in if there's not much current. But if you are having a thick wire, if the current is screaming, if there's a lot of surge, a lot of drift, you can use a thick wire. But make sure when you're reeling quite fast so it doesn't get stuck. My personal preference, I use a cone sinker for most of the fishing. Cone sinker gives me better distance. It doesn't have much resistance when a fish bite, so which is good, and doesn't get stuck easily. I do get stuck, but not as often as when I'm using a grapnel sinker. But when you cast your bait, you find that there'll be some movement, as I spoke before about where you're casting and your bait going near rocks. If there's current, look at which current is it, north to south or south to north, and look at where that bait is actually moving. Is it moving closer to the rock? Is it moving less? Is it coming front? Is it, what is actually going on? Understand the ocean, understand the sea, understand the place where you're fishing. So if you find that your bait is moving closer to the rock, you need to reel and recast it, or move it away from the rock. But if you find that it's going closer to the rock, sometimes it gets pushed and pushed and pushed until it gets stuck completely. Then you're stuck, and you to break everything off. So be able to understand the ocean, be able to see these things. It comes with experience. It comes to understanding the spot, understanding the ocean, understanding different types of currents. So make sure you keep your trace where you want it to be. So that's the end of this video. Just 3 aspects we spoke on. Hope this video helped you. We're gonna be targeting more topics soon, as I see relevancy into what guys actually want. I get a lot of questions on rock and surf angling. Feel free to comment what's working, what maybe we can all share our ideas, we can learn things from one another. It's a fishing community. Yeah guys, we are almost at 1,000 followers on this channel, so we are going to be working on this. I got actually a few things in my mind that I'm gonna be planning on to make more videos on. So yeah guys, keep commenting as to what you want. Let me know if you feel otherwise on this video. I'm willing to learn. Nobody is immune to criticism, so good things, bad things, we all want to hear what you say. And thank you for watching this video. So we're gonna be having more videos, and I hope this helped you to have that trace last you much longer. Tight lines and all the best.